They don't ease into it. Crockett is already mid-question when the clip starts, voice steady enough to make the tension feel intentional. Lake sits tall, rehearsed confidence on display, but there's a flicker, one beat too slow, when Crockett cites her own words back to her. No shouting. No theatrics. Just a cold, precise tone that says the real hit is coming, and Lake can feel it before the audience does. A committee member shifts forward. Someone in the back swallows audibly. The air changes, tightens, like the room already knows a reversal is seconds away. Crockett lays one document on the table. Not explained. Not framed. Just placed. And that's the moment the temperature drops. Crockett starts low and controlled, voice steady enough to make the room lean in. No accusation. Just the exact words Kari Lake has repeated for months, laid out like clean, cold facts. Lake nods too fast. Overconfident. Then stills when Crockett inserts a clipped, and you stand by that, today? A half-second pause. Barely visible. But it lands. Lake's smile tightens at the edges, like she wasn't expecting the first question to cut this close. She shifts in her chair, eyes darting once, not enough for a headline, but enough for the committee to clock it. Crockett doesn't push yet. She just repeats one of Lake's own quotes, slower this time, stripping it of the applause it once lived on. Someone exhales in the audience. Soft, but audible. Lake clears her throat before answering, too late, the hesitation already logged. Her response comes out smoother than her expression, like her face and her voice aren't coordinating. Crockett tilts her head. Small gesture. But unmistakably, I just saw that. No interruptions. No raised voices. Just the first little imbalance settling onto the table between them. And the room feels it. That early pressure you only notice because everything should feel normal, and somehow doesn't. Crockett slides a printed message across the desk like it weighs nothing. But the timestamp on top hits harder than any accusation. Lake's eyes flick down, quick, then away even quicker. That's the tell. The room catches it. Crockett reads the line flat. No credible evidence to support that claim. No commentary. Just the words her own staff wrote. Lake tries a pivot. Context matters. But the date betrays her, and she trips on her own correction. Late October, I mean early, well, actually. Every adjustment makes it worse. A committee member looks up sharply. A whisper moves through the back row like someone just replayed the moment in real time. Crockett leans in half an inch. Not aggressive. Calculated. Which version should we believe, Ms. Lake? The one you said then, or the one you're inventing now? Lake stiffens. Tucks her chin. Overcompensates with a too bright, too wide smile. The kind you put on when the floor shifts unexpectedly under your feet. Crockett waits. Lets the answer hang. Because the silence is louder than anything she could say. The crack isn't the message. It's Lake hearing her own private doubt read out loud, with nowhere left to redirect it. Crockett's voice stays calm, but the rhythm tightens, each word landing like it was measured twice before release. Your team said this privately, yet you said this publicly. No spike. Just a clean incision. Lake tries to interrupt. A quick inhale, a raised finger. But Crockett steps straight over it, not even glancing up. Let me finish, because your correction just contradicted your testimony from 10 minutes ago. Lake freezes mid-blink. The kind of pause that feels accidental, then humiliating. A committee member leans forward, elbows on the desk. Not a word spoken, but the posture says, we're listening now. Lake attempts a measured rebuttal, but her cadence fractures. A stuttered start, a clipped stop, a breath she forgets to disguise. Every slip magnifies the one before it. Crockett narrows the scope. So either your team misled you, or you misled the public. Which is it? Lake straightens, but the chair sounds louder under her than it should. A sharp scrape, a room-wide wince. The pressure doesn't come from volume. It comes from the way Crockett's precision leaves Lake no oxygen to hide in. Crockett doesn't raise her voice. Doesn't lean in. She just places one more document on the table, face up. And the headline line is already visible. We know the claim won't hold up. Lake's jaw shifts before her brain catches it. A reflex. A giveaway. Crockett reads the sentence out loud, slow enough that every syllable lands like a separate hit. No commentary. No framing. Just the undeniable confession of her own campaign. Lake blinks hard. Once. Then again, slower. Realizing the room is watching the exact moment she realizes she's cornered. Someone in the back whispers, "Oh wow," before getting elbowed silent. The tension snaps from quiet to charged in a single beat. Lake forces a smile. Thin, shaky, the kind that cracks at the edges before fully forming. She opens her mouth to speak, but the breath comes out wrong, too light, too rushed. The mic catches it. Everyone hears it. Crockett waits. Lets Lake hang in the space between shock and excuse. Then, When did you first see this message, Ms. Lake? Soft. Deadly. Lake's hand twitches toward the document, then withdraws like touching it might implicate her further. She tries to answer. I'm not sure I don't recall, this may not even. Every fragment is worse than the one before. The committee chair shifts, slow and deliberate, signaling they've heard the spiral begin. Lake finally blurts something half-formed, half-defensive. And immediately realizes it contradicts what she said in section 1. The room clocks it. Crockett clocks it. Lake clocks the fact that everyone clocked it. Silence. Heavy. Humiliating. This is the moment witnesses train to avoid. The split second where the lie, the timeline, and the private truth collapse into one visible crack. And Lake knows it. Because her eyes don't move from that single damning line. We know the claim won't hold up. Lake lunges into a defense before Crockett even finishes breathing. Words tumbling out too fast, too sharp, like speed alone can outrun the record. It was taken out of context, the team handled that, the media twisted. None of it forms a full sentence. Crockett cuts in clean. Ma'am, answer the question you just ran from. No raised voice. Just the surgical precision of someone who knows the witness is losing altitude. Lake talks louder. Then louder again. Volume trying to replace credibility. Her hand gestures widen, jittery, knocking the microphone once. The thud echoes, and the room winces. Crockett leans back slightly, the smallest display of control. Why are you avoiding the timestamp, Ms. Lake? A single line that drains the momentum from Lake's entire rant. Lake pivots. Blames staff, blames overzealous volunteers, blames misinformation from unknown sources. Every pivot spins her further off balance. A committee member raises a brow. Another scribbles something down without breaking eye contact. Lake sees it and rushes faster, tripping over her own rationale. Crockett's interruption hits like a brake. Stop. You just contradicted your claim from 2 minutes ago. The room murmurs, quiet, but sharp enough that Lake's shoulders stiffen. Lake stares at her notes, searching for a lifeline that isn't there. Her mouth opens, but the sentence dissolves on the runway. The silence after is brutal. Crockett presses. Were you misled? Or were we? Lake inhales. Too long, too shaky. A breath that exposes panic more clearly than any word. Her next statement lands crooked, rushed, defensive, and instantly collapses under the weight of its own inconsistency. Someone in the audience whispers, she's done, before being hushed. The scramble has taken over. And that's the real problem. Because every frantic answer sounds less like explanation, and more like confession in motion. Crockett shifts posture, barely. But it's enough to signal the turn. Let's simplify this, she says, tone cooled to steel. So if your team knew, and you were told, and you still repeated it, what do we call that? Lake freezes, mid-prepared rebuttal. The script she planned doesn't fit this angle. Her eyes flick left, then right, hunting for an ally. None move. She forces indignation, but it comes out thin. I reject the premise. Crockett slices in before the sentence stands. No. You created the premise. The room reacts. Not loud, just a collective shift forward. As if everyone caught the sudden reversal at the exact same second. Lake attempts a reset. I acted on the information I had. Crockett taps the document once. A single, sharp sound. You had this. Lake's breath stutters. The kind of microbreak that microphones always pick up. Crockett lets the silence stretch. A slow, tightening cord that Lake can't cut. Her confidence deflates in real time, posture shrinking by degrees. Lake tries one more defense, softer this time. I wasn't aware of the full context. Crockett steps in with a line that lands like a verdict. Context doesn't change the truth. It changes the excuse. A committee member exhale laughs, quiet, disbelieving. Lake hears it. Her jaw locks. The balance shifts instantly. Crockett isn't asking questions anymore. She's defining the narrative, and Lake is reduced to reacting. Late, shaky, unconvincing. The corner isn't sharp. It's slow, inevitable, built from every contradiction Lake didn't control. Crockett starts stacking the contradictions. Not dramatically, just in clipped beats that hit harder because they're undeniable. Your statement on the 12th. Your staff message on the 14th. Your televised claim on the 16th. Each one lands like a separate strike. Lake's expression tightens with every timestamp. She doesn't interrupt this time. Doesn't even try. Her eyes stay fixed on the desk, as if looking up might confirm the damage in real time. A committee member stops taking notes. A subtle shift, but the implication is brutal. They've heard enough. Lake attempts a small correction. Something about miscommunication and moving pieces. But the words come out deflated, stripped of the edge she tried to wield earlier. Crockett doesn't even respond to the excuse. She just continues listing the discrepancies, methodical, like she's reading the end of a report that writes itself. A low murmur ripples through the room. Not loud, not chaotic. Just the collective sound of people recalibrating their view of someone in real time. Lake hears it. Her shoulders tense. Her gaze flickers upward once, then retreats immediately. A silent acknowledgement that the room is no longer neutral ground. Crockett closes her folder. Slow. Deliberate. A signal that the argument has moved past debate and into record. Lake doesn't challenge it. She folds her hands instead. A posture shift that reads more like damage control than defiance. The fight is gone from the air. What's left is the consequence settling in. Soft but unmistakable. Like a verdict whispered before it's announced. Crockett speaks without hurry now. The confrontation is over. But the meaning still has to land. Her tone drops into something steadier, heavier. Democracy doesn't survive repeated on faith. It survives on truth. No spike. Just a controlled reminder of what all this was really about. Lake doesn't answer. She sits motionless. Hands clasped too tightly. Eyes locked on a point nowhere near the committee. The earlier fire replaced by quiet calculation. Or quiet regret. Hard to tell. The room notices the difference. Crockett lets one last silence hang. Not to corner her now, but to mark the weight of what's been laid out. A pause that feels less like pressure, and more like consequence. Lake finally exhales, slow, as if accepting that the hearing has shifted from performance to record. The committee chair nods once. No dramatics. No final clash. Just the sober closing of a moment that will follow Lake. Far beyond this room. The heat is gone. What remains is the truth Lake couldn't outrun. And the responsibility Crockett refused to let slip. When the questions stop, the silence hits harder than any exchange that came before it. Crockett doesn't gloat. She doesn't press further. She just lets the record speak, a timeline of contradictions Lake couldn't outrun and the one message her testimony could never reconcile. Lake sits back, shoulders lowered, the last traces of defiance drained into something quieter. Not defeat. Exposure. The kind that lingers long after the cameras stop rolling. The room exhales as if it's only now allowed to react. Murmurs rise, then settle into a heavy quiet, the weight of what was revealed shifting from confrontation to consequence. This is the part audiences replay. Not the explosion, but the aftermath where the moral line becomes impossible to ignore. If truth is optional in politics, what happens to the people who still depend on it?